Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our 2022 preview event for the Ohio Environmental Council. Thank you so much for joining. We are so excited to have you all here today and to preview the exciting things that we have planned for the year ahead. I'm Trish Demeter. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Ohio Environmental Council. I'll be your MC today and presenting alongside some of our very esteemed staff, who I will introduce momentarily. But first, 2022 is already off to a rockin' start. Having laid the groundwork in 2016 and 2018 on our democracy work, the OEC has grown its involvement in fighting for fair maps and a fair democracy, and increasing access to our voting systems in Ohio. We believe that without a functioning democracy, the environment and public health suffers. Within just the past 2 months, the groundwork that we've been laying has paid off, especially in the fight to end partisan gerrymandering in both our Statehouse and our congressional districts. We won a court case at the Ohio Supreme Court after the Ohio Redistricting Commission enacted gerrymandered state legislative district. We joined the Ohio Organizing Collaborative and CARE Ohio to challenge these maps in court. And the Ohio Supreme Court ruled in our favor and struck down these unfair maps 2 times and tasked the Redistricting Commission with redrawing these maps to be more fair and more representative of the voting patterns of Ohioans. A decision on these maps possibly could, or the next step with these maps could happen as soon as today. And also today, we didn't plan all this happening on one day during this preview event, but also today, President Biden is visiting our state, Northeast Ohio. He's making a few stops to announce huge investments in restoration of Lake Erie and the Great Lakes, and also investments in infrastructure that will help support a climate resilient Ohio. As a statewide organization, we have been proud to tell the Ohio story about how federal action on climate change and investments in infrastructure will protect families and communities throughout the state. 2022 is also a year of transitions. It's a year, in addition to making progress this year, this will be a year of transition after more than 6 tremendous years leading our organization and expanding our impactful programming and building strong partnerships across the state. Our executive director, Heather Taylor Measley, recently announced that she'll be departing the OEC for a new, really exciting opportunity at a national organization called American Rivers. It's one of the oldest national water organizations in the country. And she'll be transitioning to just a different role at a different organization and will be a forever partner and supporter of the OEC. This news is bittersweet as her impact on the OEC has been multifaceted and enduring. I personally feel really lucky to have worked with Heather and have been mentored by her over the last 6 years. I've grown so much in her role. And interestingly, I will be taking the helm as the interim executive director over the interim period while our board of directors launches a search for our new permanent executive director. That process will take several months, as you can imagine. A national search for a new executive director and to fill such big shoes could take us into the spring and summer, but please stay tuned with the organization. In the meantime, I, alongside our tremendous staff, will be continuing to work to make progress on all of our issue areas. So before we dive in to our esteemed speakers, and I'll introduce them very briefly here, but we'll get more into who they are in their presentations. But Callia Téllez is our Environmental Policy Fellow. Will be presenting on our public lands and democracy programs. Kylie Johnson, our Southwest Ohio Regional Director, and Brian Siggers, our Cleveland Metro Advocacy Director, will be talking about their exciting plans on what kind of progress we'll make in the Cleveland area and the Southwest region. But I would like to give you a broad overview of some exciting news and exciting plans around energy and water. I'll keep this brief so that we can get right to Callia, Brian, and Kylie here in a moment. So on energy, our themes for this year are threefold. First, we are going to be actively moving bold climate and clean energy policy forward. We will continue to work to undo the damage of House Bill 6, and we'll also be leading in and ensuring that locals continue to lead the way on climate action. Under each of these categories or each of these themes, there are specific efforts. I'll talk about those quickly. First, moving a bold agenda forward. After House Bill 6, many of our allies, including folks in the faith community, business community, and with environmental justice organizations, were kind of getting tired of talking about, what we were fighting against. And we wanted to present or wanted to work on what a big, bold vision would look like to put people back at the center of energy policy and not continue to talk about policies that benefit corporate utilities and their shareholders. So that is, those conversations really spawned and inspired the Energy Jobs and Justice Act. The concepts in this bill and in this this movement is really about ensuring that we are addressing climate justice, racial equity concerns, as well as economic justice, and that we're holding our public utilities accountable to be more transparent, to have regulators actually regulate public utilities in the state of Ohio. We also have big plans to think of new models like community solar, where someone who lives in an apartment or a home that isn't suited for rooftop solar would be able to participate in a solar array that is in their community. These are great ideas to get us thinking about how we can be creative and innovate. Undoing the damage of House Bill 6, as you can imagine, we've only had partial repeal where the nuclear subsidies were repealed late last year. But there are still some pieces of House Bill 6 that are still on the books. Currently, we're still bailing out 2 coal plants, one in Indiana and one in Ohio. Those are subsidies that every Ohioan is paying on their electric bills, and to the tune of $225 million since early 2020. So we need to work to repeal those. We're trying to work bipartisanly, and several Republican legislators as well as Democratic legislators are advancing legislation to do just that. We're also working constructively with utilities, at least 3 of the 4 utilities in Ohio, to think about ways that they can offer, once again, energy efficiency rebate programs to their customers. This is cost savings that we have foregone when HB 6 eliminated our state efficiency standard. Locals lead the way. OEC has been a partner organization to the Power Clean Future initiative in Ohio, and that is an initiative with a lot of different partners, business groups, environmental allies, consumer advocates, alternative transportation advocates, to get cities in Ohio to commit to at least a 30% carbon reduction by the year 2030. We have secured commitments from 28 PCFO or Power Clean Future Ohio communities, with a goal of this year of reaching 45 communities. So we are excited about that. Kylie and Brian will talk a little bit more about our expansive and more broad efforts in their regions. PCFO is just one part of that. In our water program, 3 major goals or 3 major components of our water program: fighting toxic algae in Lake Erie and other waterways in Ohio. We are also working to ensure safe, affordable drinking water for all in the state of Ohio. And lastly, we are working to fight emerging contaminants and also replace lead service lines to protect our drinking water from contaminants that can harm people and communities. So first, taking these one by one again, ending or fighting against toxic algae. Building on our successes from last year in the budget process, where we secured over 170 or helped advocate and to secure $170 million in H2 Ohio funding. We are working with the coalition and through an initiative called the Ohio Agricultural Conservation Initiative, which is a lot of agricultural producers and scientific institutions like Ohio State and Heidelberg University, working to get farmers signed up and other agricultural producers signed up to implement conservation practices on their land to prevent nutrient loading in Ohio waterways. So we have more money coming into that program and exciting federal dollars that could supplement and add to those investments. Specifically for those folks up in the Toledo area, we will have a big focus this year on the Maumee watershed. This is a very large watershed that empties into the western basin of Lake Erie, which has been the most plagued by toxic algae issues over the last several years. The Ohio EPA will be beginning a process that will set some standards for how much pollution can come into that waterway that would add to degraded water quality and also that contribute to the toxic algae problem. We'll be actively engaging in that process, and there'll be opportunities for public engagement. And we hope that you all will speak up and stand for strong standards that will ensure better water quality in the Maumee watershed and in Lake Erie. On the drinking water front, infrastructure upgrades, as well as investments in public water systems that filter out emerging contaminants like forever chemicals or PFAS, if you follow that issue, all of that comes at a cost. And so this line of work that we do is to ensure the balance of high quality drinking water with the need to ensure that it remains affordable, because we believe that safe drinking water is a basic human right. And the pandemic really exposed the fractures and fissures in our drinking water system. The most vulnerable of our neighbors had water shutoffs or had trouble paying their water bill. And the goals here is to ensure that we retain their access to safe and clean drinking water. We've had some great progress over the last year, especially in Toledo. We were able, working with our water team, Melanie Houston, and our Northwest Regional Director, Nick Mandros, and Pete Booker, our water managing director, to establish new programs and rules at the city of Toledo to ensure residents don't face water shutoffs and have the ability to pay down any kind of debt and also get relief from high water bills. In 2022, we'll continue to use these tools to build and replicate this success in other places like Toledo, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lima, and other places that are going through drinking water rate design or are thinking about ways that they can ensure access to safe, affordable drinking water. And we also, with this issue, we have to be coupled or at least to be aligned with the federal investments that are coming down the pike to replace lead service lines. We've been working at the state level in a bipartisan fashion to talk about ways the state of Ohio can ensure that local water utilities have access to loan funds and other mechanisms to replace lead service lines so that we can end lead service lines once and for all in the state of Ohio. This again is a matter of funding, and it's also a matter of advocacy to ensure that communities are voicing their concerns about the long legacy of lead service lines in their community and how to address them. So with that, that's our energy and water. There was a lot in there, but I wanted to provide at least some general themes and specific examples on how we're moving these issues forward with water and energy before we dive in to our other two program areas, land and democracy. So I will be happy to introduce now Callia. She'll come on screen here. Thank you, Callia. Callia Téllez is our Environmental Policy Fellow supporting the work of democracy in lands while also rooting their work in efforts to ensure the environmental movement is prioritizing communities most impacted by environmental injustices. Callia came to us As a recent graduate from Ohio State, studying environmental policy and decision-making with a research background in agricultural water conservation efforts and an advocacy background in national public lands protection. Two things that have really been employed in their work in the time that they've been with us. So Callia, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Trish. And I'm so excited to be chatting with you all today and providing these updates. I will start with public lands. And, it was actually a year ago, almost to the day, that I was interviewing for the policy fellow position. And it was there that I met Nathan Johnson, our director of public lands. And I was immediately captivated by the work being done in Southeast Ohio, specifically in the Wayne National Forest. The opportunity to become immersed in the work to protect and preserve Ohio's only national forest right in our backyard. It was a huge reason why I came to the OEC. Now, the goal of the fellowship program is to prepare young professionals to become well-rounded environmental advocates. And Nathan has taught me a lot about the tool of environmental litigation. OEC is currently litigating a U.S. Forest Service project that would authorize the clear-cut logging of almost 2,500 acres of oak forest in the Wayne. This landmark case for the OEC has the potential to set some groundbreaking precedent on what we call the wood wide web. So these are the connections and relationships between fungi and trees that make a forest a living, connected ecosystem rather than just a collection of trees. Through my work with public lands, I've learned just how special the ecology, historical legacy, and outdoor recreation economy movement is in Southeast Ohio. Encompassing these assets is our campaign to establish a national recreation area in the Wayne National Forest. Just share this map here. This campaign started off as a local grassroots effort to preserve and protect an area of the forest that contains 30,000 acres of future old growth forest and has 100 miles of backpacking trail, including the Buckeye Trail and the North Country National Scenic Trail. Our crew of supporters has grown to include over 100 local businesses and governments, and the incredible efforts of our local partners and allies and our new Southeast Field Director, Molly Jo Stanley. We're realizing there's even more potential to grow this national recreation area. It could include 70,000 acres if we include backcountry, the Monday Creek ATV trails, and the Bailey Mountain Bike Trail. And that's twice the size of Cuyahoga Valley National Park. But ahead of us now is a conservation campaign that's truly unlike anything OEC has taken on before. The next few months will be dedicated to growing stakeholder partnerships in the region. We'll be educating policymakers in hopes of finding a congressional champion who's willing to put the national recreation area on paper in legislation that will forever protect the backcountry and elevate that identity of recreation and conservation in the Hocking Valley. So now onto the democracy update. At the OEC, we believe a healthy environment can only be achieved if we have a healthy and functioning democracy. And that's why OEC has centered democracy in our work and why we've been so laser focused on the redistricting process since the beginning of 2021. Now, I came on board in April, right when we were really hitting the pavement with redistricting work. And I just want to say how fortunate I am to work with Chris Tavener, our staff attorney and my mentor, who has really led the charge here at OEC on redistricting. In those early months, we were meeting with groups of everyday Ohioans across the state and really just listening and learning how gerrymandering impacts the issues Ohioans care most about. And it was out of this process and later our process of preparing Ohioans to advocate for fair maps that revealed the core reason why OEC is engaged in democracy work. As we've said, a healthy environment is not possible without a healthy democracy. I provided testimony to the Redistricting Commission time and time again on this intersection of gerrymandering and environmental injustice. And I'll show you another map here. Maps like this that illustrate that people of color communities most impacted by environmental harms, such as cancerous air quality, are the same communities that are being split apart and diluted into gerrymandered districts. Now, gerrymandering mutes these voices at the Statehouse on critical issues of health and safety. And this work was highlighted by the Brennan Center for Justice alongside our environmental narratives in redistricting that was uplifted by Yale Climate Connections and Insider Climate. Now, reflecting on this past year, our coalition won big. With the Ohio Supreme Court overturning gerrymandered Statehouse and congressional maps, the OEC was a plaintiff in the Statehouse maps case, and we filed an amicus brief in support of a congressional map appeal. The Ohio Redistricting Commission convenes today, as Trish said, in about an hour actually, to release the next round of maps. And the Ohio Supreme Court, especially Republican Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, has made it abundantly clear what the Ohio Constitution says about gerrymandering. The OEC, alongside our equal districts partners, will continue holding politicians accountable until they draw fair maps. The overwhelming of Ohioans, both Republican and Democrat, voted for fair maps in 2015 and 2018. This is not a partisan issue. It's about ensuring politicians uphold the will of all Ohioans. But most importantly, looking forward, we have our work cut out for us for ensuring the Ohio Redistricting Commission truly follows the instructions of the Ohio Supreme Court and finalizes new district plans. But off the coattails of gerrymandering work, we're at a moment here where OEC has partnered with incredible advocates across the state, and we're seeking to strengthen these partnerships, these allyships, as we explore future opportunities to uphold the freedom to vote all Ohioans deserve. Ballot access, decision maker accountability, gerrymandering, and so many other democracy issues ensure all Ohioans have access to safe and healthy environment. Because the truth is, if the voices of Ohioans are stifled in our government, if the voices that are calling for access and protection of our national forest, safe drinking water, clean air, and climate action are not heard, then we do not hold nearly the power we need to realize the work of the environmental movement. So thank you for letting me provide this update to you all, and I will pass it back to Trish.
Thank you, Callia. Really impressive work. Thank you so much. Well, we want to, our next two speakers are going to take us into their regions. But first, I want to talk a little bit about our regional program. Several years, for a long time, and I've been with the organization for almost 11 years, and for a long time, we only had staff in Columbus. But about 5 years ago, we realized that having staff throughout the state of Ohio would help us better connect with the environmental problems that communities were facing throughout the state, and also ensure that there were connections to Columbus by environmental advocates who are doing really, really great work throughout the state of Ohio in their communities. So as of today, we have 5 regional staff. We've got Nick Mandros heading up our work in Northwest Ohio and Toledo especially. We have Chris Tennant, who is covering the Northeast Ohio region that includes Youngstown, Warren, and Akron. We have Molly Jo Stanley, who is covering Southeast Ohio, covering quite a few of the Appalachian counties. And Brian Siggers in Cleveland, as well as Kylie Johnson. So I'll introduce these two together, and then the two of them can hand off to one another. But Brian D. Siggers serves as the OEC's Cleveland Metro Advocacy Director. He joins the OEC after years of experience in political consulting with extensive work in working on political campaigns at the local, state, and federal levels. His background is in grassroots organizing and advocacy, where he helped to increase voter education, turnout, and participation. He's a proud graduate of Ohio University, where he earned his degree in political science. Brian is also a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the 100 Black Men of Greater Cleveland, and the NAACP of Cleveland. Kylie Johnson is our Southwest Ohio Regional Director, and she began her career with the national nonprofit Alliance for Climate Education, or ACE. During her time at ACE, she opened their first Ohio office and educated thousands of students about the science, the consequences, and the solutions to climate change. For the past 7 years, Kylie managed the Green Learning Station, which was a LEED Platinum certified environmental education center, considered one of the top 10 greenest buildings in Cincinnati. And since joining the OEC last May, Kylie has been working alongside residents, community groups, and OEC partners to build a powerful environmental movement in Southwest Ohio, focused deeply on the greater Cincinnati region. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Brian, and then Kylie shortly thereafter.
Trish, thank you for that very warm introduction. I really appreciate it. And good afternoon to everybody in attendance today. I'm Brian Siggers. I'm the new Cleveland Metro Advocacy Director for the OEC. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, I'm from Shaker Heights, Ohio. Grew up in the area, got my degree in political science from Ohio University, as Trish stated. And upon graduating, I've worked on several campaigns. And in doing so, I wanted to really, find a space to work in an area of advocacy. So after consulting with my friends and one of my good friends, Jay Davis, who's a board member for the OEC, he connected me with this organization, and I read a little bit about the organization and the great work that they're doing. And I knew I just had to be, I had to get involved because I truly believe that environmental justice is a severely under-discussed issue. And I wanted to be able to highlight the issue and bring it to the forefront of our communities, because I think that communities of color could really benefit from being involved in this conversation. One thing that really impresses me is the policy platform, which was developed in late 2020, right ahead of the citywide elections. It was comprised of dozens of local and regional nonprofits and CDCs who've come together to create actionable, locally designed policy recommendations across the sectors of environmental justice, water, land and green space, transportation, energy and air quality, and environmental justice is woven throughout the entirety of the platform. We had the opportunity to meet with Mayor Bibb and his administration in December of 2021. We were excited to work with Mayor Bibb because he ran on an environmental platform that focused on addressing environmental justice and climate action. Our coalition was able to present policy recommendations from the policy platform for water. Some includes complete lead service line inventory and making findings accessible. To provide lead service line replacement education programming for residents, and to prioritize replacement of service lines, fixtures, and faucets, as well as drinking stations within Cleveland Metropolitan School District and underserved communities throughout the city. For land and green spaces, we propose that we continue working with the Cleveland Tree Coalition to invest in strategies to achieve the goals of the Cleveland Tree Plant and craft achievable neighborhood plans and for increasing the tree plantings on private and public right-of-way lands. For infrastructure and transportation, we recommended utilizing Vision Zero action plan to commit to eliminating serious injury and fatal crashes on Cleveland's roadways, and to hire a traffic engineering firm to evaluate existing bike lanes and upgrade Cleveland's existing bike network. For energy, we recommended that we follow through on the commitment to modify or terminate Cleveland Public Power's overpriced supply contracts, enabling Cleveland Public Power to innovate with 100% clean energy resources, to revamp Cleveland Public Power's governance structure to increase accountability, transparency, and efficacy, and to launch a community solar program that prioritizes frontline community ownership and local benefits. In the meeting with Mayor Bibb, he was definitely receptive to our policy recommendations. He was engaged throughout the entirety of the meeting, taking notes and asking questions where he saw was necessary. He expressed that he's excited to work with our coalition, and he stated that he wants this coalition to essentially serve as an extension of his administration. And I think that, as we saw last week when the Bibb administration released their transition report, environment was a key focus. And I think it was demonstrative of this commitment to working towards environmental progress. So with our coalition, we're going to continue to meet, and we're going to discuss our progress on the policy recommendations. We've designed a tracker to track each of these policy recommendations to see where we are, to see where our benchmarks are. And as we continue to meet, we're going to evaluate our progress and see how we're going to proceed on each of the issues. For our annual plan, we're going to, continue to meet with our coalition meetings and our wonderful partners who are working to make sure that this great environmental work is happening. In addition to our regular coalition meetings, we're going to be hosting quarterly meetings to grow our coalition and add more local partners and environmental champions to our environmental convention. We're really excited to bring back our kitchen table talks, to bring back, to bring environmental conversations to the forefront of our communities. And we have other exciting programming that's in the works, and I'm really excited to share once the plans are finalized. And lastly, I just want to touch on something that Trish stated. We do have President Biden in Northeast Ohio and Lorain discussing the $1 billion that's going to go towards protecting and restoring the Great Lakes. And I think that's really exciting to have President Biden here to discuss the importance of having clean water and accessible water in Northeast Ohio, and that's exciting. And we're looking forward to see what comes of that. And that's what we have going on in the Cleveland region. Thank you, guys.
Kylie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you, Brian, for that fantastic update. It's really been great to see a fellow regional director doing such fantastic work, hitting the ground running in Cleveland. But I'm really excited to be here today to share all of you a little bit more about my work in Southwest Ohio over the past 9 months. I can't believe it's been 9 months already with OEC. But first, I wanted to share a little bit more about myself so you know why I'm so excited about this work with OEC. So my passion for the environment really stems from growing up on an 86-acre farm in Southeast Ohio, and being exposed to nature at a young age really instills a deep appreciation for the environment within you. And that's motivated and inspired me to help others with their protection of the natural world and their sustainable living. And so for the past decade, I've called Cincinnati my home. And I've been building deep relationships in the community through my work as an environmental educator, through the positions that Trish mentioned. And this has really created a strong foundation for my work with OEC. I'll always be an educator at heart, and that's really important and critical to this role. But I'm also thrilled to be more actively engaging in advocacy, because I feel this sense of urgency with the latest IPCC climate change reports for really all of us to take immediate action. And that's what I admire about the team here at OEC. So in my role as a Southwest Ohio director, I'm providing boots on the ground support to the region, focusing specifically on communities whose voices have historically been excluded from the environmental movement, especially those frontline communities who are most impacted by the effects of climate change. And at OEC, we believe one of the best ways to address climate change is at the local level, where we can still have wins and successes, even if we have poor national and state leadership. And there have been cities across the state distinguishing themselves as environmental champions, Cincinnati being one of them. And so I'm going to be focusing my work deeply in the greater Cincinnati area over the next year, because there's a lot of work to be done here, especially with developing environmental champions and our newly elected leaders. It's a really exciting time for us to be growing our presence in Southwest Ohio, as we have strong climate champions in our new mayor, Aftab Piraval, and our city council members as well. So along those lines, over the past few months, I've been developing relationships with our new leaders and educating them on issues so that they can help make bold policy changes for the environment. I have helped set priorities for the incoming administration as a member of, at the time, Mayor-elect Piraval's Environmental Task Force transition team. And I was also the first speaker back in January for the Cincinnati City Council's new Climate, Environment, and Infrastructure Committee, which excitingly is the first of its kind in Cincinnati. But from our research, we believe it's also the first of its kind in the country. So during that meeting, I briefed the committee on OEC's policy priorities and the key legislation that we're tracking at the federal and state levels, and how these bills could potentially impact our region. The committee, chaired by Councilmember Mika Owens, was very enthusiastic about our work and excited for future opportunities for engagement. So looking to the year ahead here in 2022, I'm really looking forward to continuing to establish OEC's presence in the region, continuing that work with our local elected leaders, and then strengthening community and partner relationships to help advance local environmental justice policy priorities. So one of the areas that I'm going to be focusing on this coming year is improving our regional partnership building and communication on policy issues. So we're working internally on some tools that will allow us to regularly provide legislative updates on policy issues that we're tracking with our local partners that are all at the local, state, and national levels. And additionally, for our region, we're going to be hosting legislative briefings twice this year with bringing in our policy experts from Columbus to help connect our region more to what's happening at the state and national levels and how that could potentially impact our region. Another area I'm very excited to focus on is deepening relationships with our local partners and stakeholders to help mitigate the local impacts of climate change and also advance those environmental justice priorities. And I'm really grateful here in Southwest Ohio. I have amazing coalition partners in this work. And there's already a lot of wonderful efforts underway that I'm going to be supporting throughout this year. For instance, one of those is Green Umbrella, our regional sustainability alliance. They are launching a Greater Cincinnati Regional Climate Collaborative this year. In addition to supporting that effort, I'm going to help local environmental justice nonprofit Groundwork Ohio River Valley set the advocacy strategy for their nationally recognized Climate Safe Neighborhoods program. And then finally, another collaborative initiative I'll be helping with is the city of Cincinnati is due this year to start the process for renewing the 2023 Great Green Cincinnati Plan. And the Green Cincinnati Plan is a comprehensive set of recommendations that help advance sustainability, address equity and resilience in our city. And it has helped establish Cincinnati as a national leader in sustainability, for instance, with plans to build the largest city-owned solar array in the country. So those plans are still being developed, but I fully intend to participate in that process. Now, one final initiative to share today is that I am also on the planning committee for Green Umbrella's Midwest Regional Sustainability Summit. And we're very excited that this year it will be happening as a hybrid in-person virtual event on June 16th at Xavier University's Statehouse Center. This is a wonderful opportunity to bring hundreds of leaders, elected officials, passionate residents that are committed to sustainability together to learn how we can advance resiliency in our city. And this year's theme is Emergent Strategies for an Equitable Climate Prepared Region, which goes along wonderfully with our mission at OEC. So if you want to find out more information about that, there's a link that was just dropped in the chat there. And we're also currently accepting award nominations, field trip proposals, and art submissions through the end of the month if you have any of those to submit. Finally, I'll leave you with a link to sign up for my Southwest Ohio regional newsletter if you'd like to keep updated on what we're doing in the region. So thank you so much for your time today and all of your contributions to help us in our work.
Thank you, Kylie. I can't say that enough, and just on behalf of all the staff, thank you all for your tremendous support for the Ohio Environmental Council and the work that these great staff and all of our staff do to advance better environmental outcomes for all of the state. We are going to turn to our Q&A session here. So if you're thinking of a question, please use the chat box to drop your question in there. I already see a few coming in. We're going to give folks a few moments to craft a question for our speakers are really on any issue that the OEC works on. We'll do our best to answer it, and if not, we'll follow up. But before we jump into the Q&A, I just wanted to ask Kylie, Brian, and Callia, what are you most excited about to work on this year and accomplish? So in reverse order, let's go Kylie, then Brian, then Callia.
It's so tough to choose just one thing because there are a lot of exciting efforts underway. But I would say I'm very excited about supporting our partners and all the wonderful work that they're doing. The update to the Green Cincinnati plan is extremely important. And this iteration of the plan, I know there are already considerations underway to make sure that equity and community voice is centered in the plan. So I'm really excited to have OEC at the table to make sure that that work is completed and that there is a lot of community input in the process.
I'm really excited that's a tough question. You're right, Kylie. There's so many exciting things going on with the OEC, but I'm really excited to reboot the kitchen table talks. Again, I think that it's really important to really have these conversations and connect our community with these experts and these answers so that they can really see so they can learn about these things and how they impact them directly. I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited to continue to work with our great partners and continue to be that great convener to work towards environmental efforts with our coalition. So I'm really excited to get the work done and to work with this dynamic team.
I'm thinking about all of our public lands work we have coming up. And normally at the OEC, we're taking a watchdog role and we're really playing defense with trying to protect access to our public lands. But the really exciting thing about this National Recreation Area campaign is that we are taking a proactive stance of trying to protect and preserve 30,000 acres, possibly, tacking on more recreation opportunities and having this fantastic 70,000 acre area in the heart of Southeast Ohio. And I've had the privilege to meet with so many local advocates who feel really strongly about this rising tide of recreation economy in Southeast Ohio. So I just really look forward every day to the next steps in those campaigns.
Thank you all. All right, we'll turn to some questions from our participants and supporters. We have a question from Rick regarding the icebreaker wind demonstration project. His question is, where does the icebreaker project stand? Is the OEC working with the PUCO and legislature to implement the project? Thank you, Rick, for that question. The icebreaker project is a demonstration freshwater offshore wind project proposed for about 6 miles off of Lake Erie, the shore right there near Cleveland. And OEC has been engaged with this project since since the early days of its kind of permitting process at the PUCO, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, and the Ohio Power Siting Board. The good news is that this project has its certificate from the Ohio Power Siting Board. That occurred, I think, last year. We were engaged and through our attorneys, our energy attorneys, to ensure that there was a good, strong balance and a strong precedent to ensure that the resource of Lake Erie, the aquatic life, wildlife, and water quality were well protected, but that we also created, solid rules, transparent rules around wind energy developers that were interested in freshwater offshore wind development. This project is currently under appeal. The decision to allow it to move forward is under appeal by some residents up near Cleveland. And the appeal was brought by opponents of this project. So we filed an amicus brief in support of the icebreaker project back in June. You can find that on our website, and maybe someone can drop that in the chat back to our participants if you'd like to read that and the points that we raised in that amicus brief to the court. But our hope is that we see this appeal not move forward and that the project is able to begin construction as soon as possible. Okay, other questions? Okay, we have a question from Glenn. What is the OEC currently working on to move Ohio to net zero in the future? Great question, Glenn. I think what's been interesting, and I'll try to take a stab, but then I'll see if Kylie, Brian, or Callia have anything else to say about this. But essentially, the movement, especially in corporate America, to go net zero, to really reduce the carbon footprint of companies and operations and manufacturing in the state of Ohio, is a big deal. It's becoming more and more mainstream for businesses to set very aggressive goals and plans to be net zero or net zero on their carbon footprint in the future. I can't say that we have like an overarching strategy other than our energy work is really trying hard to decarbonize the electric sector by making sure that renewable energy and energy efficiency have a level playing field with polluting sources of energy. And additionally, we are supportive of the electrification of transportation. So we do quite a bit of work with an allied organization called Clean Fuels Ohio to promote and advance electric vehicle adoption throughout the state. Exciting things, there's a piece of legislation that would advance Ohio's auto industry to be more aligned with electric vehicle deployment. And we are also watchdogging in our watchdog role the proposed microchip, or I don't know if that's the right term, facility, the manufacturing facility announcement from Intel in Central Ohio. They have, this is going to be an enormous facility that will have an environmental impact. But interestingly, like for example, they'll be drawing 5 million gallons of water a day from local water tables. However, they have very aggressive renewable energy and net zero carbon goals for the future. So we'll be tracking that. We'll be working to ensure that they are held to account if there are environmental impacts, but also ensuring that they are set up to be able to really fully execute their renewable energy and net zero carbon goals into the future. So I don't know if that's exactly what you were looking for, Glenn, but it's on our minds. I'll say that in all of these different ways. Okay, so question from Jay-Z, maybe the Jay-Z if he's following our work, but Jay-Z in the chat, thank you for this. This is directed at Callia, who I hope can take this one. Jay says, I really appreciate the OEC's participation in the lawsuit against gerrymandering. So far, it's been a success, but I worry about how this process has worked so far. What are our plans for the future? Are we thinking about a move to instituting an independent commission as suggested by the Chief Justice?
Absolutely. And, as I said, OEC is really prioritizing, we're focused on getting a good map for 2022, because what we get in our map now dictates so many things that matter for our environment, for our Ohioans' health and safety 10 years out. And as this dust settles, we're working with our partners to assess what the ultimate outcome of this process has been and what we need to do moving forward to ensure Ohio has a fair and representative democracy. So one step at a time, but I know we're excited to explore lots of these different options and opportunities over the next few years.
Thanks, Callia. Yeah, Jay-Z, I would say we have a really strong coalition that we work with on democracy issues and especially redistricting. I think the biggest challenge is getting through today and getting through the next 10 days when they're supposed to be presenting new congressional districts. But certainly we'll be talking about what are our options after that if it doesn't go our way. So looking at all those options is certainly the mindset that we bring to all of our issues. All right. Okay, so I'm trying to, sorry about this, a little bit of a delay. We do have a question on HB6, expressing frustration. So why won't our state political leaders repeal all of HB6? We continue to give thousands of dollars every day to coal power plants and that exist to destroy our environment. And you are not the only person. He's asking, am I the only person who is frustrated with the complete lack of leadership? And I would say very much, and to Chris's point that, this all ties back to this nexus between a healthy democracy and a healthy environment. I think political leadership, especially in Columbus, and especially in an election year, if I can riff a little bit on that, there's just resistance to do anything bold or really follow the will of the people. I think redistricting is a really good example where the voters said very strongly in 2018 with that constitutional amendment that we wanted partisanship taken out of the map drawing, and that just hasn't happened. We aren't sure that this process has really worked. We're kind of relying on the courts to see this through. But with HB6, there does seem to be, I will give you a glimmer of hope that there does seem to be a faction of lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans, that are eager to repeal or at least find the off-ramp for the coal plant subsidies. These two plants were built in the 1950s. One is in Indiana. There is a very complicated ownership structure, and these coal plants have a lot of pressure on them for environmental standards. So we may see their closure coming before we see action on our legislators' parts to repeal the coal subsidies. The other glimmer of hope I'll give you is that there is an active piece of legislation called House Bill 389 that has passed out of a House committee and is awaiting action by the full House that would restore partially the energy efficiency rebate programs that all Ohioans, or most Ohioans, had access to prior to HB6 repealing them. That bill is important to cost saving and reducing reliance on coal plants. So those are two things. We're feeling a little bit of momentum on the coal repeal and even more momentum to restore some level of energy efficiency programming, which would be great. Okay. And how are we doing on time? I'm looking to Annalisa. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, we can do one more.
Okay. One more question. So one question about the Cleveland Climate Action Plan regarding solar and stormwater mitigation. Brian, perhaps you could talk a little bit about what the plans are to advocate on those two particular aspects of the Cleveland Climate Action Plan.
Yes, thank you for that question. We know that one of the priorities from the Bibb administration is to commit to Cleveland being 100% renewable by 2030, which is really exciting and will help meet carbon reduction goals. We also understand that the administration is staffing, and we're excited to see how Mayor Bibb will essentially activate his cabinet and staff to deliver on that campaign and promises of bold climate action and environmental justice. We're excited to build a relationship with the new administration and council members, and we're going to go from there.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Well, with that, we'll wrap up here. First and foremost, thank you so much to Callia, to Brian, to Kylie for joining the call and presenting on your work this year. Very exciting to hear about all of it. I also want to thank Drew Kaufman, our Director of Membership Engagement, and Annalisa Roca, our Administrative Assistant, for helping to organize this event today and run all of our tech needs. Thank you so much for that. I also want to thank you all, our donors and supporters on this call, who took the time out of your day to participate with us to hear about what lies ahead for 2022 in the OEC work. We cannot do this without your support and without you cheering us on. Thank you so much. You make all of this possible, and we truly deeply appreciate it. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, holiday weekend, and we look forward to hearing from you and also continued engagement over the rest of the year. Thank you all.